My wife, Lily, was the kind of person who brought warmth into every room she entered. With her soft green eyes, gentle smile, and a heart that always put others first, she had been the center of my world for 12 beautiful years. We met in our early 20s, built a quiet life together, and shared dreams of growing old in our small, cozy house with the grand oak tree in the backyard. Lily was a kindergarten teacher, dedicated to her kids, and I was a busy graphic designer, often stressed but always anchored by her love. Our marriage was filled with laughter, shared morning coffees, and unspoken understanding. But over the last 6 months, a cold, unexplainable distance began to grow between us. It started subtly. Lily became unusually quiet, her bright smile faded into a tired, distant gaze, and she started spending hours locked in our bedroom, refusing to talk to me. At first, I tried to be patient, asking her what was wrong, but she would only shake her head, look away, and whisper, "I'm just tired, David. Please, give me some space." As the weeks turned into months, my patience morphed into frustration and deep insecurity. She stopped hugging me when I came home from work, her side of the bed felt like an ocean away, and she began taking long, mysterious walks alone in the evenings. One night, after finding her packing a small suitcase in the middle of the night, I completely lost my temper. I assumed the worst, the classic, heartbreaking cliché. I thought she had fallen out of love with me, or worse, that there was someone else. We had a terrible, shouting argument. I begged her, with tears in my eyes, "Don't leave me, Lily. If there is someone else, just tell me. Don't do this to us." She didn't argue back. She just stood there, holding her suitcase, looking at me with an expression of profound, crushing sorrow that I will never forget. "I'm sorry, David," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But I have to go. It's better this way." She walked out of the front door into the pouring rain, leaving her wedding ring on the kitchen counter. I was paralyzed by a mixture of anger and grief. For the next 5 days, I sat alone in our empty house, drowning in bitter thoughts, convinced that the woman I adored had simply abandoned our life together. I called her phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. On the 6th morning, unable to bear the suffocating silence anymore, my phone finally rang. It wasn't Lily. It was a cold, professional voice from the city central hospital. The doctor on the line asked if I was David Miller, and when I confirmed, his tone dropped into a heavy, solemn quiet. "Mr. Miller, you need to come to the hospital immediately. Your wife, Lily, was admitted 5 days ago. She doesn't have much time left." My heart stopped, the phone slipping from my trembling fingers as the world around me turned completely upside down. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. My mind was completely numb, a chaotic blur of panic, guilt, and terror. I ran through the sterile, white corridors of the oncology ward, the squeak of my shoes echoing like a ticking clock. When I reached room 402, the doctor stopped me outside the door, his face lined with deep sympathy. "Mr. Miller, your wife was diagnosed with aggressive stage 4 brain cancer 6 months ago," he said softly. "She explicitly requested that we didn't contact you until the very end. She didn't want you to watch her fade away. She wanted you to remember her as she was." The words felt like a physical blow, tearing the air right out of my lungs. 6 months ago. That was exactly when the distance began. The long walks, the locked doors, the quiet tears. She wasn't hiding another man. She was hiding a death sentence. She was carrying the crushing weight of her own mortality all by herself, just to shield me from the pain. And I had screamed at her. I had accused her of betrayal. With a shaking hand, I pushed the door open. The room was dim and quiet, filled only with the rhythmic, mechanical hum of the heart monitor. Lily lay in the center of the bed, looking impossibly small, fragile, and pale. The vibrant, energetic woman I had loved for 12 years was hooked up to countless tubes and wires. Her beautiful green eyes were closed, and her breathing was shallow. I collapsed into the chair beside her bed, burying my face in her cold, weak hand, and finally broke down. "I'm so sorry, Lily," I sobbed, the tears burning my eyes. "I'm so incredibly sorry. Please, don't leave me." As I wept, my hand brushed against the handle of the small bedside drawer. Desperate for anything that could connect me to her thoughts, I pulled it open. Inside, resting on top of her medical charts, was a small, hand-knitted pouch. I opened it and found 3 neatly folded items: a handwritten letter addressed to me, a small voice recorder, and a photo of us from our honeymoon, smiling under the grand oak tree. My hands shook violently as I unfolded the letter, her delicate handwriting blurry through my tears. The letter was dated the exact night she walked out of our house into the rain. I held the fragile piece of paper, my tears staining the ink as I began to read her words. "My dearest David," it began. "If you are reading this, it means my strength has finally failed me, and the doctors have called you. Please, don't be angry with me for leaving. And please, never think for a single second that I stopped loving you. 6 months ago, when the doctor told me the cancer was terminal and moving too fast, my whole world collapsed. My first instinct was to run to your arms and cry. But as I watched you working so hard, smiling, and planning our future, I realized I couldn't do that to you. I watched my own mother die of this same illness when I was a child. I remember the agony, the hospital smells, and the way my father's spirit was completely crushed by the end. I couldn't let you watch me wither away into a shadow. I wanted your last memory of me to be full of life, not of sickness. I created the distance because it was the only way I could force myself to detach from you. Every time I locked the bedroom door, it was to hide the agonizing pain and the hair loss. Every long walk I took was to cry where you couldn't hear me. The suitcase I packed wasn't to start a new life with someone else, it was to come here, to this hospital room, so I could face the final days without dragging you into the darkness with me. I provoked that last argument because I thought if you were angry with me, it would be easier for you to let me go. But seeing the look in your eyes when you begged me to stay broke my heart completely. I left my ring on the counter because I felt unworthy of your pure love. Please forgive me, David. Underneath the photo in this drawer, you will find a small voice recorder. Press play. I left a final piece of my heart in it for you. I let the letter fall to my lap, my chest aching with a pain so intense I could barely breathe. The absolute selflessness of her sacrifice was staggering. She had endured the loneliest, most terrifying journey a human can take, entirely alone, just to preserve my happiness. I looked up at her pale, still face, the monitor beside her blinking slowly. With trembling fingers, I reached back into the drawer, past the honeymoon photo, and pulled out the small black voice recorder. I pressed the silver play button, and the quiet hospital room was suddenly filled with the soft, warm sound of Lily's voice. The recording began with a soft, familiar sigh, followed by the faint rustling of sheets. Lily's voice sounded weaker than it did in my memories, but it still possessed that beautiful, melodic warmth that had grounded me for over a decade. "Hi, David," her voice echoed softly in the quiet room. "If you're listening to this, it means I'm no longer there to say it myself. I'm recording this from my hospital bed on my second night here. The room is quiet, and all I can think about is our home. I miss the sound of your laughter. I miss the way you always make coffee a little too strong in the mornings. I know you must be hurting right now, and you're probably blaming yourself for our last fight. Please, stop. You did nothing wrong. You loved me perfectly, David. More than I ever deserved." I squeezed her cold, frail hand tighter, my tears dripping onto the bedsheets as her voice filled the space between us. "Do you remember the day we planted the oak tree in the backyard?" Lily's voice continued, a fragile, nostalgic chuckle breaking through the recording. "We promised that no matter how hard the storms hit, we would stand strong, just like that tree. I need you to remember that promise now. My body is leaving, but my love for you is rooted deep in that soil. I don't want you to spend your life mourning in an empty house. I want you to open the windows. I want you to keep designing, keep creating, and eventually, when the time is right, I want you to smile again. Promise me you won't close your heart off from the world." Suddenly, the real-time heart monitor beside the bed let out a sharp, erratic series of beeps. The steady line on the screen began to fluctuate wildly. Lily's breathing grew incredibly shallow, her chest barely rising. Panic exploded inside my chest. I dropped the recorder onto the nightstand and frantically pressed the emergency call button. Within seconds, 2 nurses and the attending doctor rushed into the room, pushing me back toward the door. "His blood pressure is dropping rapidly," a nurse yelled. The doctor grabbed a syringe, his face grim. I stood frozen at the foot of the bed, watching the love of my life slipping away right before my eyes, while the recording on the table kept playing her final, bittersweet words into the chaos. The doctors and nurses moved with frantic precision around Lily's bed, their voices blurring into a dull roar over the terrifying, continuous ring of the monitor. I was pushed back against the cold wall, completely helpless. In the background, the small black recorder on the nightstand kept playing her final message, her soft voice cutting through the clinical chaos. I will always be with you, David. Under the shade of our oak tree, in every morning breeze. I am not gone. I am just resting. Then, with a long, agonizing beep, the heart monitor flattened into a straight line. Time of death, 4:12 p.m., the doctor said quietly, stepping back and lowering his head. The world around me completely shattered. I fell to my knees by the side of her bed, burying my face in her blanket, and let out a broken, silent scream that tore through my very soul. The nurses softly left the room, closing the door behind them to give me my final moments with her. I held her hand until it grew cold, kissing her forehead one last time, completely drowned in an ocean of regret and sorrow. I had spent months being angry at her, completely blind to the fact that she was sacrificing her own comfort to save me from this exact moment. A month after the funeral, the house felt like a hollow, echoing museum of our past. I had kept the curtains drawn, living in absolute darkness, unable to look at her things without breaking down. But on a warm Saturday afternoon, remembering the promise I had made to her voice on that recording, I forced myself to walk out into the backyard. The grand oak tree stood tall, its vibrant green leaves rustling gently in the summer wind. I sat down at its base, leaning my back against the strong, rough bark, and opened the hand-knitted pouch from the hospital drawer. I looked at our honeymoon photo, then unfolded her letter one last time. As I sat there, a soft breeze swept across the yard, carrying the faint, sweet scent of Lily's favorite lavender perfume. For the first time in months, the heavy, suffocating knot in my chest loosened just a little bit. She wasn't truly gone. Her love was woven into the very fabric of my life, rooted deep in the ground beneath me. I closed my eyes, let the final, peaceful tears roll down my cheeks, and whispered into the wind, I promise, Lily. I will be strong. I looked up at the sunlight filtering through the oak leaves, finally ready to step out of the darkness and live the life she had fought so hard to protect. If this story kept you watching till the end, hit the like button and subscribe. More shocking stories are coming soon.